No worries. So I'll repeat the question. If you could start us off with this, Assemblymember Chiu, could you discuss Governor Newsom's imprecise timeline for reopening the state's economy and what that means to the small businesses who make up the bulk of California's economy?
Well, I think I'm not sure I would describe it quite as imprecise. I think the fact of the matter is we just don't know how long the shelter-in-place orders are going to be, and it is all a function of the curve and how far along we are in keeping our communities safe. And so it's imprecise for a reason. We can't make definitive calls right now, so I understand and appreciate why Governor Newsom is unable to give us a particular date. That being said, from my perspective, and I think the perspective of the governor and every policymaker in California, we want to do everything we can to stabilize the situation for struggling Californians, and in particular for the backbone of our local economy, which is our local small businesses that have been just hammered. The Congressional Federal Stimulus Act was supposed to provide assistance to small businesses, but the first tranche of money has already been swept up, and the need is just enormous. Our legislature, very likely, when we go back in a session, if it were up to me, I think one of the first things that we would take up would be a state economic stimulus package to really fill in the gaps in what we're seeing. And given that this is an ethnic media briefing, we know this is particularly important for our diverse communities and certainly our immigrant communities who have been the founders of a lot of these small businesses and who can't access capital in the way that others can. And so, I think we have to think creatively. Just a few days ago, Governor Newsom announced his $125 million fund to start to assist non-citizen workers who are moving forward in this time. I think we have to think creatively for businesses that are run by immigrants as well. A couple years ago, I authored a bill that Governor Brown signed that allowed anyone, regardless of immigration status, to get a business license in California, and we've got to do more in that area.
That's fantastic. And could you discuss, I know you were going to discuss a bit more on measures that the state legislature is taking to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on local workers and businesses?
Yeah, so we have seen just an overwhelming number of workers that have been hammered through this, and these are workers that work for employers, many of whom are small businesses that are unable to keep their doors open during this time period. So, in addition to traditional unemployment insurance, there is also a new pandemic unemployment fund that will be up and running in about 2 weeks, according to the Labor Secretary, to provide funding for non-traditional workers that are making up an increasing portion of our workforce. So we're talking about independent contractors, so-called gig workers, self-employed workers, who will finally receive some level of unemployment safety net funding during this time period. I mentioned already the fund for undocumented workers, but we've got to keep doing more.
Absolutely. I'm now going to open the call up to reporters. Could you please queue up if you have a question for David?
And by the way, I realized I didn't have I'd like to just, if I can, just say a few words on a few other topics.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course.
So just jumping right into it. And I'm sorry, I'm sort of coming halfway through. I just finished a town hall in my district. So before our legislature went back to our districts a couple weeks ago, we had authorized a $1.1 billion initial set of funding, really for Governor Newsom to use as he saw fit. He has put that to good use in a number of different contexts, from providing funding for homeless individuals and stabilizing people without shelter, to providing additional resources for our healthcare workers, to ensuring that we are patching up the social safety net. So there are a lot of things that are happening generally. But I will tell you, as a chair of the API Legislative Caucus, there have been a lot of things that we've been much more specifically focused on everywhere, everything from how do we stabilize people in their homes. So I led the charge for eviction moratoriums when it comes to the plight of some 17 million tenants who have been very concerned about being able to pay the rent. We've been working with the governor on how to ensure that our public benefits program, that people aren't being unnecessarily kicked off those programs during this time period. I mentioned homelessness before. As a chair of the Assembly Housing Committee, making sure we are housing as many of the 151,000 Californians that do not have shelter every night. Stabilizing them is super important. I want to make a specific point around the API community. I think everyone in this call knows that in addition to the coronavirus, a lot of Asians have been experiencing the virus of racism. And our caucus recently launched, along with several API advocacy organizations, an online reporting website at Stop AAPI Hate. And what that found was literally in the first 2 weeks of tracking over 1,100 incidents reflecting the entire spectrum of violent hate crimes to discrimination incidents to bullying in classrooms. Well, before all this happened, we knew of bullying in classrooms, to racist incidents that are happening in big box retail, on what transit is still left. So there are a ton of very challenging things that are happening. We'd asked our governor to make a statement to denounce the anti-Asian racism that we're seeing, and I appreciate Governor Newsom for issuing a strong statement in this area. Our caucus continues to be proposing new and different ways for us to get at this, but it's ongoing. I think the last thing I will say, and then open it back up to questions, is communities that are challenged because of language have really been suffering during this time period. We need more information and resources for limited English proficient communities. In California, over 42% of all households speak a language other than English, and it reflects the diversity not just of Spanish, but it's Chinese and Korean and Vietnamese and Tagalog. It is Arabic and Russian, and the list goes. This has been particularly true with EDD. So with millions of Californians who are applying for unemployment insurance, if you don't speak English, it is not easy to navigate the system. And we're asking folks who need help, obviously, to work with our legislative offices, but also with a web of nonprofit providers out there as we're moving forward with this. I have spoken directly to Labor Secretary Julie Su, who was a longtime civil rights advocate, and she is acutely aware of the challenges here, and I know is working hard on this. And related to all this, is how do we provide the support to small businesses and undocumented workers that have otherwise been left out, and many of us are working on that as we speak.
Perfect.